Jeff Point is in charge of the RV parking. He makes sure that you get in and out safely. He does a tremendous job with the rest of his guys.
Well, I don't think I know because I count them all. The previous record was 354 on the field at one time, set in 2009. And before I reveal this year's figure, I just want to say on behalf of everybody that we're very grateful that as an homage to the RV-14, we all got 3 more inches of elbow room at our tables this year. 476 RVs. Scattered around in the North 40 and here and there, so it's reasonable to say that there were 500 RVs on the field this morning.
I'd just also like to take a little time here to ask Mike Reddick to come up, and he just wanted to introduce and talk a little bit about a special young man that he's brought along to Oshkosh here. I think a number of you are aware of this particular program. Was well publicized on Van's Air Force. Talking of which, I'm not sure where Doug Reeves is this year. He's kind of hiding somewhere, but we're going to have words with him about that. But Mike, come on up here and just tell us a little bit.
Hi, you guys. Many of you guys are aware of what we were able to do this year. I think it really points to the power of this community, the Vans community that we've somehow created here. This year, well, I guess last year, Alex's family, this is Alex Villar and his dad, Alejandro. Last year has been rough for him. Alex, who was on track to be a commercial pilot, was doing his training, dreaming about planes like many of us did at an early age, was diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor. I forget the name of it, something with a lot of letters. Yeah, he could probably tell you more about that. Anyways, you can imagine it was a pretty rough year for them last year, and they were looking for things to do to make Alex feel better. And one of those things was to come over and look at my RV-10 project in our garage. Alex came over, we had a great time, and we talked about Oshkosh, as many of us do when we have people over, talking about planes. And I asked Alex if he'd ever thought about going. He said, "Boy, you know, that'd be a dream come true, you know, if I could go to Oshkosh." And I said, "Well, if you can be healthy enough to go to Oshkosh, maybe we could get some people to help out. Maybe we could make that happen. Would you be interested in that?" And of course, he said, "Yeah, he'd do his best." And I put the word out on Van's Air Force. Thanks to Doug Reeves for such a great forum to help support our community. And boy, it just took off like wildfire. Everybody got involved. It was amazing. So many people to thank. Paul Miriams did a lot of fundraising. Paul Miriams, can you stand up, Paul? Yeah, thanks, Paul. Paul is the maker of the DRTT2 Dimpler that we all have come to love recently. Thanks also to Dwight Dress, if you could stand up, Dwight. Dwight drove him all the way here, him and his father. Well, not drove, flew in his brand new RV-10 all the way from Colorado. First time coming into Oshkosh in a plane he built. Congratulations, Dwight. And all the other many people that helped out. Gary Menzimer with Ray Allen Company got them their passes for this week. EAA for helping out with transportation. Gave them a golf cart to use. Just everybody that helped support what we were doing. Guys that took their time in their planes to give us some stick time before this whole Osh thing even began. Gary Zillick and so many other people that helped out. So anyway, I just wanted to give them a chance to say thank you, and I thank you.
Helped so much in bringing me here. I've always wanted to come here since like I was 13 because it's just an amazing place, amazing people who paid for my trip basically and allowed me to have a lot of fun. And it's so great.
Just to continue a little bit with the flying plane theory, we've actually done pretty well this year in terms of sales. You might think that the economic downturn is affecting bands badly. It's actually not that bad. Just as an example, in the last year, we sold 220 starts on the RV-12 alone. So we're still selling plenty of kits out there, and actually that's a pretty good indication of the success of the RV-12. We've got about 670 kits out there under construction now. As you know, the latest model is the RV-14, and so I'd like to ask Van and Ken Kruger to come on up here, and they wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and explain a little bit about how it came into being and some of the philosophy behind it. So, go ahead, Van.
Okay, well, as you may know, we're always dreaming and scheming of what to do in the way of new and better airplanes. And really, while the RV-5 was still under development, we realized that the RV-10 was actually came out better in some respects than we had anticipated. It had so much interior cabin room, baggage carrying capability. Field of view was better than we anticipated. Got to thinking, well, a lot of people just love this airplane, but what if we could incorporate some of these qualities in a two-seat airplane for people that didn't need the size and expense of a four-place? That was a lot of the thought process that went behind it, went into it. You might think of the airplane as an enlarged RV-7. You might think of it as a shrunken down RV-10. Somewhere in between, as far as the actual details, Ken Kruger is much better able to fill you in on that than I am. So.
The engineering team, of course, is just part of the overall team, which includes the whole of Van's aircraft and really the whole of the RV community in developing this airplane. And something that we're really proud of, and something that I personally am very proud of, is just the teamwork and the cooperation that we've experienced in the engineering department. And so you don't know, you've met Van, you've met me, you've seen Ryan and Scott here, but there's some other folks involved as well, so I wanted to just kind of introduce them very, very briefly. So here's our RV-14 development team. Phil Ribble, he's one of the engineers. I call him my tortoise. He's the tortoise in the team. Very reliable guy, and you just give him a job and it gets done. And it's kind of a behind-the-scenes kind of a thing. Scott McDaniels, and another guy who's really kind of behind the scenes. And of course, Scott is one of the key people behind getting a team flight program set up in Oregon, and really put a lot of effort in there. And I think that a lot of that effort really doesn't really get recognized. I know until you've done such a project, you don't realize how much effort goes into it. It was kind of fun standing out in front of the RV-14, and this guy Lyle Heffel came out, and he's, for those of you who don't know, he's like a really ace RV builder. He's got more bronze Lindy's than I don't know how many he's won. But he came out and he said, "Ken, who built this thing? It's beautiful." And I just said, well, it's our prototype shop. And he was just going on. And this is a guy who's a great craftsman, and he was very complimentary of the work that Scott and another guy you'll meet here in a minute that works under Scott in the prototype shop. So that was pretty fun to hear that. Of course, it's embarrassing the heck out of Scott right now. The guy in the shadowy airplane here is Ryan Johnson. I didn't take a picture of Ryan before we left, so I had to snap this in the air. But Ryan built an RV-7A and flew it here. So another engineer, Michael Schwartz, and I apologize, Ryan, I didn't cover what Gus covered, which is you've really kind of stepped up and kind of done what I call a lot of systems integration on RV-12, RV-14 that's carried forward. So Michael Schwartz, another one of the engineers, quiet guy, sits in the corner, likes to drink coffee. I don't know. So at lunchtime, you can always smell he's got the coffee maker going. Amber Ingram, if you're wearing one of the 40th anniversary shirts, she did the logo on the back of that. She worked with Gus and Joe to develop that. And that, I'll get to this later, yeah. Ed Chesney and Adam Birch. So Phil, we already talked about him. He's the tortoise, and he comes from Minnesota, engineering degree. Scott, another Minnesotan originally, and Ryan with his RV7A. I kind of just stepped all over myself here. I had it all planned out, but this didn't really work. Amber, so you can see, this is what I wanted to mention. That's actually a misnomer on the tail, SLS. It should say salsa, because she makes a mean batch of salsa, and she'll bring in a batch of salsa every so often, and there's great rejoicing in the engineering department when that happens. Anyway, she's fun-loving. She's a drafter, and another one of those people, just like many of you in this crowd, very quiet and just kind of behind the scenes, but you know, plugging away and going day by day. She had some fun at Arlington too. Ed Chesney, he's another A&P mechanic. He got his A&P rating at Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, and he was headed to the mission field until there was this other girl at Moody that he met, and well, you know the story there. And then our newest addition is a drafter, Adam Birch, and Adam composed or edited a lot of the videos that you've been watching. So if you've seen them online, or the one that was playing here. And so I'm going to bore you with a quick little story. So so the thing I want to emphasize is that the RV-14 was a total team effort on the part of the engineering department. Again, the whole of the RV community. But in that environment, everybody plays a role. Everybody appreciates the roles that the other people play. And we do this, it's really revolutionary, this thing we do in the engineering department. I know it's going to shock you, but it's a thing called communication. And we talk together, and we kind of kick ideas around. It's great fun. And contrary to popular belief, everything doesn't always go perfectly in the proto shop and in the engineering department. And so we're scheduled to do the first flight on RV-14. And Len Fox, our test pilot, was scheduled to come in. And it was, oh, good grief, I don't know, it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and someone comes up and says, Ken, the rudder cables are hooked up backwards. So the rudder cables needed to cross, and they didn't, and so the rudder was hooked up backwards. And nobody caught it until that moment. Was it you, Scott, that noticed that and came to me? Ed noticed it, okay. And so we're going, oh no, Ed's gonna, or Len's gonna be here very shortly. And things started happening. Okay, what are we gonna do? The RV-10 cables cross over. We needed a bracket to support the cables where they cross and keep them separate from one another. What are we gonna do? We'll go get the RV-10 part. Can you make it happen? Scott and Ed dove into that airplane. They tore it. I mean, the thing was ready for flight. They tore it apart, not tore it, but took it apart as designed. And we're actually a little more professional than that. Took it apart, got the problem fixed, and you know, we ended up not flying that day because of crummy weather. But that airplane was ready to go by, I think, 2 o'clock that afternoon. It's memories fade. And so, you know, we thought nothing of it. That's just what we do. And Adam comes to me and he says, afterwards, and he says, Ken, I can't believe what I just saw. And he explained, he said, you know what you guys did? You identified the problem. There was no finger pointing, nothing, none of that sort of thing. It was just everybody pulled together, got it straightened out, got it fixed, and it was ready to go. And it was something that, you know, it took this guy who had only been there a little while to notice that and kind of point it out. And it's kind of stuck with me. I'm really proud of that. So I have to be candid, though. The reason none of us kind of pointed fingers and said that is because we all know we've either done it or we're going to do it. So anyway, a dose of humble pie is occasionally a good thing. So I'll just close with a nice view of the RV-14. And
at this point, I'd like to ask Paul Dye to come up. You ready, Paul? and he's going to talk a little about the odyssey that the RV1 has recently undergone, culminating in its arrival here and the presentation to the EAA yesterday. Paul.
Okay, thanks. So I won't take very long, but the RV1 was sitting down at Dodge County Airport on, I guess it was Saturday, and several people came up and said, Paul, your team has done it. You've got it to Oshkosh. I said, do not say that. It's got 30 more miles to go. We started flying the RV1 around the country just before Sun and Fun, and it's been on the move ever since. I've taken a quick look at the logbook, but I haven't been able to put an engineering rigor to it, so I'll give you some approximations. Since its restoration to flying status, it's flown about 120 hours. Joe and I did a quick, well, the United States is this wide and it's done this, and we think it flew about 12,000 miles in that time, over about a 4-month period. Over that period of time, we had stops planned all over the southeast, the east coast, up into Canada, across the United States. It was scheduled for something almost every weekend for 4 months. We missed 3 events due to weather. I put on instruction to our pilot team that there were 2 kinds of emails I could expect. The ones that I was looking forward to getting from our pilot team, who I'd selected for their judgment and maturity, was, Paul, I'm canceling this next weekend's event. The weather's not good enough. I'm not going. I told everybody I was looking forward to that email. The one I never wanted to see was, man, it was really tough. The ceilings were low and the visibility was horrible, and we squeaked by the radio tower. I never want to see that, and I never did. Nobody pushed it. This was too valuable of an airplane. So I can tell you some stories about it, but frankly, you could probably read most of those because I seem to have ended up with an awful lot of pages in some magazines recently about it, a lot of pictures. If you didn't see it, go by the Kit Planes booth in Hangar or whatever, and they've got a whole stack of the August issues, so it's got some great pictures. But I just want to recognize some folks. Is Paul Tuttle still here? I wasn't sure if Paul Tuttle was still here. He did the painting.
I think he had to leave.
I think he had to leave, okay. But I just want to publicly thank, we kind of forgot to do that because I know we've got Canadians here. I wanted to thank COPA, the Canadian Owner Pilots Association. They did a great job of getting Paul down here. And we kind of forgot them the earlier day. But I want to ask everybody who flew the RV1 that's here in this period of flying to stand up, please. I want all my RV1 pilots to stand up. Well, yeah, it's you, Dick. Okay, round of applause. Stay standing. Anybody who's an escort pilot? Do we have any escort pilots? Stand up. The escort pilots are the heart of this operation because, yeah, we got to sit in this thing and fly around, but you needed help to get everything where you were going.
One of our escorts, part of the teen flight crowd.
A teen flight escort pilot, okay? Now, we have to sit down. I want anybody who contributed to this program, monetarily, with time, with parts, with anything else, if you did anything regarding the RV1, stand up. Now that was 17. Okay. This was a remarkable operation. When we needed something, we picked up the phone. Without exception, if I called a vendor, said, hey, this is Paul Dye, we're working on the RV1, I got, what do you need and where should I send it? Without exception. Outstanding contributions from the whole community. We did some fundraising, but that wasn't what was really important. It was getting bits and pieces. I never did see a list of what Barton Sue did to the engine, but it's running really good. So we'll have to talk about it later because they said they're going to keep this thing flying. So Bart, if you were expecting it, to last only 150 hours, they may want to fly it some more. The airplane was a really nice flyer. Everybody who flew it shared their experiences. We had a private little Yahoo group for the pilots to share their experiences. And again, with almost no exceptions, everybody would fly it and they'd feed that back to the group and say, hey, found that This will sound familiar. If you touch down with a wheel landing, it's going left. All right? That's not Dick's fault. That was somebody who hard landed it a long time ago and bent the gear. But it's a very sound flying machine. Everybody said, what's it like to fly? Well, it flies like an RV. It's a little bit shorter coupled on the ground. But it's a very honest airplane, and we enjoyed it. I think that it's a little slower than it should be because, well, I'll tell this story. When we built it, we needed a propeller for it. So we went back into the archives, and we found a Sport Aviation article that Dick had written about this in 1967, something like that. And in it, he had the typical specifications, and he said it flew 171 miles an hour with this particular percentage diameter and pitch. Now, we sent that to Craig Cato, who built us a prop to that, and it turns out that when you firewall this airplane right now, it'll turn up to about 2,900 RPM, and it probably could use a little more pitch and probably go a little faster, more or less. I always forget what's that. Which leads me to one of two conclusions. Either Dick, you weren't quite sure what it was really twisted to, because back in those days, didn't they just use sledgehammers and bang them on rocks? You know the twist. No, okay, so wasn't that. Well, that's got to be the other one, which I don't know, but you know, a guy in his 20s with this really hot little airplane experience might have been sandbagging it a little bit, just to make sure that folks weren't going to duplicate his speeds. But no, I'm kidding around a little bit. It really flew nice, and it was a lot of fun. The project was a pleasure because of all the people we worked with. You know, I want to thank Dick himself for giving the community the chance to do this for himself and for the EAA and for the whole home building community to bring this airplane back to life and to let everybody share in the process. It was just amazing to be able to do that. You know, the other meanings of this project is the legacy that we have brought this airplane back to life. I know the factory is always conservative on numbers. There's got to be 8,000 flying, because there's got to be a few hundred people who just haven't, who are ordering enough, they don't call the factory and say that they've flown. You know, that's got to be the case. So this is an important legacy. And lastly, the real meaning of this whole thing has been the word community. We formed a very small organization, but we brought in people from all over the community to make it happen. The outpouring of people who showed up to see the airplane, to help with the airplane, to get the airplane across the country, to say, your money's no good here, I'm buying the gas, happened all the time. It was a lot of fun. So we really enjoyed it, and thank you to everybody who participated. Yes? Thank you.
Yeah, no, he's not in trouble. I need to clarify something. We've taken quite a bit of guff here about the cockpit space. Now, this was an airplane designed way back, stiff Playboy, in the early 50s. People tended to be a little smaller then. Whatever, the cockpit was only 48 inches long, period, from firewall to seat back. When I got it, I think there's a very rudimentary seat in it. A sheet of plywood for the seat back and about the same for the floor, tilted up a bit. Put some cushions in, you fly. Wasn't terribly comfortable, so when I made the RV1, made it to an RV1, I put what I considered an improved seat, which got lost somewhere over the years. You go behind the table, and so a few days ago, I tried to recreate the original seat, which I flew when I was 6'1", in reasonable comfort. It's basically a fiberglass bucket from a sport car mold that I had way back when, made a steel frame with basically a 2-spar construction under it for strength. It was quite light and quite comfortable. And it was bolted in just like it is now with 2 bolts. They just rest in the cradle on back. So I want to demonstrate something to you here. One time when I was at an early show at Rockford, it wasn't Oshkosh then. Well, I wonder if I pulled that out, if I could sit in it and watch the air show.
And it rocks.
So there, for everyone that says it's an uncomfortable airplane, I think Joe will attest, we added a little bit to the comfort factor for his 15 hours of flight here. One day, leaving Rockford, I headed, early in the morning, I headed home against a headwind, and I just kept going, and 15 and a half hours later, in that slower airplane, I made it sitting in that seat. I would never do it now. I was pretty stupid when I was 28 years old.
What does that say about Joe?
And the upholstery in the seat, I have to apologize. My tastes then were worse than now. I wanted to mention just a few things about the old days. I left my notes. Since this is the 40th anniversary, we can go back even a little further than that. Really, it started attending conventions in 1962 when I had another Stitz Playboy, which was just a basic airplane. The one that evolved into the RV-1 was really the second one, which I bought as a dismantled airframe, put the bigger engine in, etc. Wish I had a slide presentation to go with this, but I haven't. The conventions then were quite a bit different than now. In some ways, were better, in my opinion. One of the things which really, of course, appealed to me then was that all day long, you were free to go up and fly around the circuit in the flyby pattern. A free-for-all. No control, basically. You just went around and around. Of course, faster airplanes passed the slower airplanes. I guess that was one incentive for me trying to make a faster airplane. Nobody wants to get. That was a lot of fun. I used to fly once in the morning for about an hour and then another hour in the afternoon just going around and around. I guess you have to be young and in love with flying to appreciate that. The daily routine often started, there was a guy named Ray Hagee, those old timers here, they remember that name. He had a little biplane, one of a kind he had built in the museum now, called El Chuparoso, the hummingbird. And he would get up early in the morning, fly over the camp area, buzz the camp area and wake everybody up with flying alarm clock. Myself and some friends who had flown back several years to that event, we would camp in one of the display tents. They didn't have permanent buildings like now, so when the activities of the day were finished, we'd take our sleeping bags, go in the tent. We didn't have to bring our pop tents. We had a tent practically this big. There were not programs and forums during the day. The evening program was the highlight of the day. There were not rock bands then. And all of the feature programs were at night, so you could fly and watch airplanes all day and still take in the best programs. And they had some very interesting speakers. One person that came several years in succession was Alexander Lippisch, who was a German designer responsible for the ME-163 rocket interceptor, among other things. Very interesting talks, usually a representative from Mississippi State University, where they have a very famous aerophysics department and programs, and various other speakers of this caliber. So those are things I really miss, because the evening program was just something, everybody was there, and I mean, practically the entire attendance would be there. Everybody who's anybody. From 1972 onward, then the fly-ins were at Oshkosh, and I started attending them. One experience I had, I wanted to relate. When I first showed up in '72 with the RV-3, and it was a quite good aerobatic airplane, and someone had encouraged me to try and get in the air show. The air show was not as big and star-studded as it is now. A little trouble making contact with the right people, so was 1980 or 82 before I managed to fly in an air show. That was with the RB-4. One of the things that was required was a recommendation from a qualified and noted aerobatic pilot. I got a recommendation from Bob Herendeen, who had seen me fly in West Coast shows. He was about the biggest name in aerobatics at the time, so I thought, yeah, I'm in. I got a name brand recommendation. So I got put on the show schedule for a number of days, and a friend who was on the air show committee, Sam Huntington, the late Sam, put me on the list, and I'd come in there and they said, well, you've been scrubbed. You've been moved back another day. And somebody higher than he kept pushing my name back. So this particular year, the final day of the show, and those of you that have been here for final days know that there's nobody left. The crowd was not very big, but there were a nice couple. So I went up and flew with the same routine that I had done many times at West Coast shows. And I came in, and they already had the little Volkswagen called Eagle-mobiles for trooping the people down the line. There's a young lady driving the car, and we drove down past this small group of people, and she kept going. I says, well, why don't we turn around and go back? She says, I have to go to the end of the line. So we get clear to the end of the line, and the Volkswagen quits. And we were a half mile, from the last person. And I got out, I had to own Volkswagens, so I got out, got my hands greasy, got the thing running, and I said, maybe I'm not meant to be in Oshkosh air shows. Thank you. There was a program this morning on Team Flight Eagle Nest building programs. We've talked before, I've had articles. There have been articles in Sport Aviation, but we feel this is just too important not to mention. You see a lot of young folks here and a couple older folks, either wearing the blue and the yellow shirts, and some folks in Army out of the room. Now, I'm sure that each one of them has an interesting story to tell. We don't have time for all of that. A couple of them will mention a few words. The Team Flight and the Eagle Nest, you're probably familiar with, extracurricular or high school activities. The young men in uniform are from the Patriot Academy, which is an Army school, I believe, in Indiana, and it's a voluntary program where these young enlisted men go back to complete their high school education and advance their career. They've started building one of these airplanes as part of that program. Otherwise, we have from the Young Eagle program, first Justin Inman, if you'd step forward. Justin? Sorry. The light was in my eye. Justin is a member of the current, we call the Team Flight 2 program. And if you just say a few words about your involvement there.
Okay. So, I got involved in Team Flight 2 through the Airway Science for Kids program, which is affiliated with the Team Flight program, doing simulator work and ground school. And my instructor at that time knew some of the people who were working on the Team Flight 1 project, and so he asked me if I was interested, and I said yes, and so I signed up. And last September we started working on the RB-12, and as we progressed through this year, it's been really amazing. The people I've gotten to meet, people I've gotten to work with, and how I've just been able to build relationships and be able to learn things that will last my whole life, and I'll be able to use to further my education and my career and hopefully help others. So if you'd like to check that out, I'll try to get some sort of update tomorrow or something.
Thank you, Justin. Justin, I thought you did a great job on the blog spot. If any of you have visited it, you probably didn't realize that it was a 15-year-old doing it. Next, one of the young ladies in the program, Paige Quintana.
Well, team flight for me has been one of those invaluable experiences that you really can't get anywhere else, and it's brought me a long way. I mean, halfway across the country, and all the people I've met, and just all of the opportunities that I've been able to take that I would normally not have been offered. You know, the Eagle's Nest gets this through school, but there's no sort of aviation anything in my school, so it's one of those opportunities that you just can't pass up.
One other thing, Paige, you want to mention what your career aspirations are?
After completing team flight, I plan to go on and get my pilot's license, and I am going to pursue a career in search and rescue. I want to be in the Coast Guard, and I want to be a helicopter pilot.
We wish you all the luck in the world there. From the Eagle Nest program, Ross Porter. Ross, do you have a couple words? Thank you.
Hey, I'm Ross Porter. I'm the Senior Project Manager for Business Projects at James County High School. Above all, for everything, I need to thank God. I mean, I can't describe those hard days that He's got me through in this project. Well, I've always been mechanically inclined, but I knew my Lego building skills wouldn't get me far. So, this project has opened a lot of doors. I know what I want to do in the future now. But, you know, when you really start to dream, you get past all the things about places to go, people to see, you dream about what you really want to. Some dream of fame and fortune. I dreamt of seeing that airplane fly. And we got a lot of hours of work, a lot of joy in learning about aircraft, but the main thing we had was learning more about ourselves. And I really enjoyed that. And we all worked hard toward that goal to hear 901 Echo November, welcome to Oshkosh. And I'm just incredibly grateful. And you know, when this started, my engineering teacher says, hey, he wants to build a plane. Well, we think he's crazy anyways. But now we really think he's crazy. And that's what I like about these Eagles Nest projects is they resemble something of significance that you can do besides just something on a computer. It's a solid, tangible object. It's a great feeling to put something together that really kind of matters, or so it feels like. And you know, working through those first components, we worked hard, but then something just clicks, and you realize why. And you know, you'll have mistakes, Arlene's, and things like that, you know, but you just gotta get through it. A lot of prayer, and eventually, before you know it, you've got an airplane, and you got a new skill set as well. You know, torque specs, you know, bolt lengths, all those fun kind of things. I've just really enjoyed this project, and what do you know, on July 16th, 2012, 6:13 p.m., dream came true, and all three wheels separated themselves from the ground, and it was this one became an airplane. And I just got to thank all these guys, Bob, Jeff, Howard, John, everybody, the whole team. I'll never forget these guys, and I just want to thank you all.
Okay, one other young man who's got a few words to say, Eric Kraus.
My name's Kraus. I got involved in the program similar to how Justin was. I'm a Team Flight 1 participant and now a Team Flight 2 mentor. I felt that from all the experiences I got and the things I was privileged to do, that I should give back some. So I came back and I'm now a mentor, like I said, helping out all the other kids that you see behind me in the other shirts working on their airplane. I just recently got my sport pilot's license and was privileged enough to fly as a lead pilot with the RB1 all the way from Aurora, Oregon to Oshkosh here. So I'm very happy to be here and have all the privilege I have. So I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved for everything that I've been able to do.
Well, I want to thank Eric and all of the others who remain dedicated to the project to see it through. And that's part of the lesson, I think, here is building an airplane is a big project, even when you got a number of you working on it. And I agree, hopefully this is a really valuable life experience for all. Primarily, I want to encourage all of you to consider getting involved, getting projects like this started. Heavens knows we need more. Thanks a lot, kids. Enjoy the rest of the show.
I think another person maybe deserves recognition is I seem to see over there is Ted Millar, who he actually flew some of the kids here in his citation, I believe. Is that right, Ted? Stand up. He's been a mover and shaker on the team. When are you leaving? Because I'm willing to trade a seat in the RB-10 for a ride in the citation back to the RB-10 is a pretty comfortable plane, but you know, I've done it a few times now. I'm looking for a bit more speed.
Humbling, really, to be in the presence of everyone here and listen to some of the speeches of the folks in the Team Flight program from Eagle's Nest. It makes me feel good. Sometimes we lose a little bit of hope with everything that's going on in the world, and we wonder if our kids are going to make it. And seeing all of you up here and what you accomplished and hearing your stories, it gives us some hope. So thank you very much for all that. We're waiting for Ken Kruger. While we wait for Ken, this was a very, very special year for myself personally and for Team RV that was able to fly in the air show here at AirVenture 2012. Our first time flying here. We consider this really hallowed ground. I had so many moments of just, I cannot believe I'm here kind of moments. My very first one was when we taxied up, we pulled in over to what was Aeroshell Square, and of course now Phillips, and I'd been there many times, but I had never parked there before. I always park over in the home parking with the over 500 now RVers. And there was the Aeroshell team who this is the team I looked up to, flying when I was young. And there they were parked right next to me. And I see them at air shows all the time, and they're great guys, and they've been really good mentors to me. But to have them parked next to me at AirVenture was really cool. So I shut down, and I've got all these, I'm working on the team, and the crowd's there, and they're waving, and I look over, and there's two of the Aeroshell guys, and they give me this big thumbs up, and it was just one of those capture moments as a pilot that you'll absolutely never forget. I had another one this morning. I'm in the briefing. It was going to be a very light briefing for us. We were doing a circle of jumpers and the missing man, so I was sort of, half paying attention. And all of a sudden, as they kicked off the briefing, the director of operations, Joe Schumacher, many of you know him, said, Mike Stewart's going to give the briefing this morning on the opening of the air show. And I said, really? This was absolutely unknown to me. So I stood up, and I got up to a podium much like this, with a room full of about 20 people. And sitting in front of me is Sean Tucker, Michael Julian, Kirby Chambliss, some guys that maybe you don't know, maybe you do. And I realized at that moment, I am briefing my heroes. How cool is that? So I've had a lot of really neat moments here at AirVenture, and it's been an absolutely humbling experience for the entire team. We all grew up watching our heroes fly here. You know, Bob Hoover, Chuck Yeager, and Poveritz, and of course for me it was Aeroship. They were my heroes. And there we were Monday, out in that space flying, and I can tell you the entire team was absolutely a mess all day. The pilots come up, the old timers come up, Mike Goulding comes up and he says, "It's just another air show." Yeah, Mike, okay. They try to tell you, forget about where you are, and we did the best we could to do that, but when you're making the run into the aerobatic box to the world's largest air show on opening day, you cannot just forget that you're at AirVenture. That over 40 years ago, when Van was tooling around with the RV-1, that he ever envisioned anything like that. I know this because I've spent a little time in the RV-1, and there's hardly enough room for a water bottle, let alone a smoke tank, despite the wonderful seat design that it must have had at one time. I don't think he was really thinking about that. Or this. So we're obviously all here at the banquet to enjoy each other, but one of the things that we're doing also is paying tribute to a wonderful airplane design. This is a great picture that was captured when the RV-1 was brought up on the ramp, and there's all the Team RV guys paying homage to Van and the cool airplane. I thought that's one of those moments, It's neat for me because this is the air show ramp, and there's Jane Susie's plane, and some of our other heroes I mentioned earlier, one of those moments that you just capture. But there's one of the reasons why we're all here, of course, is the airplane. And the airplanes that we fly are what brought this team together years ago. It's not a coincidence that the world's largest airshow team is flying RVs. There's you could not do what we do with this number of airplanes, with T6s or other airplanes. There's just a lot of reasons which you all know that make that happen. But there's one thing we all have in common, and that we have in common with you, and that is obviously the love of these airplanes. For us, it's really not just another airplane. It's a magic carpet ride for us, and for all of you builders and flyers that spend your time, flying these things, you know what that's all about. But it gives us an opportunity to reach boundaries that we didn't know possible, and to have experiences that we never would have imagined. And I'm a civilian guy. I didn't have any experience in the military. But the friendships that we develop and the friends that I have on this team, they're my family. And I know here in this room, when we come to a banquet like this and we travel and visit in our RVs, it's really all about the people. But what brought us together was the planes, and they are really neat. One of the things that is different about being on a civilian team like this, and of course I've never been in the military, I'm just a little civilian weenie, but about half of our team is comprised of retired military pilots, and one of the things they'll tell you is that being on this team is much like being in a squadron. Only we're not cycled out every year for the next young guy who can fly faster or pull more cheese, etc. We get to hang around with each other for years, and we are absolutely like family. We're really living our dream. As I mentioned earlier, we had so many dreams that really have come true for us over the years, and here at AirVenture 2012. So we're not only inspired by the airplanes, we're also inspired by each other. And I think today, listening to these young people and seeing the real love and passion that they had getting together. So what you experienced in that process is what we experience as a team every weekend. It is really a special thing. So we hope that this group of people who is out flying and living their dreams, one of the things that we hope to do is really inspire others to go out and fly and just have those experiences. And those of us that we're all aviators, of course, and families of aviators. And you know, we ask ourselves, what are your dreams? You know, when you think about your aviation time and what is it you want to do with your airplane, you know, what are those things? And for us at Team RV, we are living our dream every weekend. But, you know, for you, you know, is it you're taking your daughter for that first ride, or is it bringing your son out to the man cave and pounding rivets, or is it sharing your love with aviation for a family like Alex and, you know, bringing them here to Oshkosh, or teaching these great young folks how to build an airplane? What we found inside the Vans community is that through these great airplanes, we meet some great people, and we get to live out our dreams. And you see the camaraderie and all the love for aviation in these airplanes here in this room. And so we hope, and this team hopes, that by doing what we do, maybe we inspire some of you to get out and pound some rivets, grab a friend, grab a grandson, bring him into the hangar, bring him into the garage, pound a few rivets, and share your love for aviation. So that's all I had. I want to thank you very much for coming. It's great to see you all, and thanks again.
Rid of me yet. No, I think that within the last couple of weeks, something appeared on Vans Air Force. Actually, something had appeared on an AOPA website about a new organization that's been formed, Aircraft Kit Industries Association, which had resulted from a number of teleconferences between a bunch of us in the kit airplane industry, with concerns about where the industry is going. The kit manufacturers and builders, all of our relations with EAA headquarters, etc. So we decided to form this organization. I think really it's about time. We've got all kinds of alphabet soup organizations in aviation, from AOPA through GAMA, you name it. Within this business, we never really have had any central focal point of communication. So basically with the organization, again, Aircraft Kit Industries Association, which includes not only kit manufacturers, but companies like Aircraft Spruce or charter members, Wix, I think Dynan, basically anyone that supplies to this industry that has, needs representation in a way. The mission statement is to represent kit aircraft manufacturers, designers, suppliers, and supporters with a unified voice in the promotion and safety of the kit aircraft industry. One of the other considerations is somehow to associate with type clubs, so that all builders and pilots of aircraft that are no longer really represented by active kit companies can have a voice, not only a voice, but benefit from the programs and the activities of this organization. We had a meeting today with EAA President Rod Hightower, along with Mac McClellan, who's editor of our magazine. And it was hopefully very productive. We got a better idea from Rod, just where he's taking the EAA as its new president, how we as the experimental aircraft builders, pilots are going to fit into that that ongoing evolution of the Experimental Aircraft Association. Then later, several of us had a meeting with Craig Fuller, president of AOPA. We're trying to reach out as much as possible and let the rest of the aviation industry know better who we are and the fact that we're going to be working together as a team. Tomorrow I think we'll be talking to some NTSB people and hopefully others before the end of the week. One of the agendas that really boiled to the top as we had our various telecom discussions was safety, amateur-built aircraft safety, which has come into the forefront recently because NTSB has done more exhaustive studies than ever on the relative safety of home-built aircraft versus typical GA. And we don't score that well. So we've definitely got our work cut out for us. You've read a lot of what I've written over the years regarding home-built safety. You've heard me talk at events like this. And I'm convinced that we are making definite strides forward, at least the RV community. From the best I can determine, we're way ahead of the rest of amateur-built aircraft in our safety, at least as regards fatal accidents. And so far this year, we're doing better than ever. And the best I can tell, within the RV group, we are maybe 10 times better than the average amateur build. That's pretty darn good. Not only that, but again, this is a little premature. It's only based on a half year's experience, but the trend is definitely favorable. I would, by my way of analyzing it, we're just a little better than GA as a whole. That's unheard of in amateur build. I think this is worthy of everyone standing, shaking each other's hand, and congratulating each other, promising to help each other and keep this going. Okay, thank you. I was going to say, if appropriate, or you can get by with it, give them a hug or a kiss at the same time. I guess the one thing I missed here, though, or I kind of overlooked, is we are the example that everyone else in the industry is going to be looking forward to. The success we've had with the transition training program, with just our ability to change the culture to that of thinking safety, is going to be the model for the rest of the industry. So we got to keep that up, and hopefully we can bring the others along with us so that we can come back next year and talk to the NTSB or the FAA and say, look, here is some tangible progress. We're a serious bunch of pilots, we're a serious industry. Thank you.